Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about The Quick and the Dead from 1995. And this was a winner of the Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I will be reviewing your movie next month. The Quick and the Dead is interesting in that it is kind of a star vehicle of Sharon Stone that Sam Raimi directed, which was his first film after Army of Darkness, which makes this sort of like his first big studio movie. Stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe in very early roles. It is kind of a B Western, spaghetti Western, weird hybrid of a thing. And there's sort of like so many interesting things about it. I was kind of enamored of it. And I think that's sort of what has made The Quick and the Dead live on. There's a lot of reasons it lives on. You know, it's director's stock. He's become much more of a name. You know, obviously with the Spider-Man movies, Leonardo DiCaprio blew up after this. Russell Crowe became a movie star. But it's very much also in its time of 1995. There was a time when Sharon Stone was more of a movie star, where someone would give her lead roles and things and so forth. Also when Gene Hackman would still want to be, you know, the resident kind of Western bad guys. This is post Unforgiven. And, you know, when Gene Hackman was still acting. It's sort of like a unique bottle in time, and I really love that about it. And I think that's sort of what makes it a fun watch, as well as like Sam Raimi really directed the hell out of this. Now, this is his first film after Army of Darkness, and his first film after completing, you know, the Evil Dead trilogy and whatever. And Sharon Stone was actually very much for him. Apparently, they sent her a long list of director names to pick from to do this project, and she sent them back one name, and that was Sam Raimi. Now, I've heard differing reports where that she totally loved the Evil Dead movies and Army of Darkness. I've heard she just thought he was really promising, which either way, who cares? I think that's really cool. If you're a lead movie star type person, you're like, no, I want Sam Raimi, and right out of Army of Darkness, Sam Raimi. That's pretty neat. And Sharon Stone also played a big part in making this cast, which is a crazy great cast in this, as unique as it is. From Keith David to Lance Henriksen to Gary Sinise to Pat Hingle to Leonardo DiCaprio to Russell Crowe to Gene Hackman. I mean, it is a crazy great supporting cast. And you need that for the kind of film that this is. Now, I should explain what this is, basically, what the plot of this movie is. It's about a woman who comes to town as kind of a lone gunfighter, played by Sharon Stone. Comes to town right at maybe the right or wrong time, and finds out they are doing kind of a quick draw contest, and whoever wins like $100,000, which adjusted for inflation is $100,000. That's a lot of money. It's a huge quick draw contest, and everyone from the kid played by Leonardo DiCaprio to Lance Henriksen's like cool gunfighting guy to Keith David, who has a mustache and a cool pipe, to Gene Hackman, who's taxing the town basically out of existence and running the whole thing, but also wants to be a part of it because he's got such an ego, and he is a pretty good draw himself. He even brings in Russell Crowe, who they call the Preacher, but used to be part of Gene Hackman's gang when he was an outlaw. He wants him to come back, and Sharon Stone joins us as well. And we see these various cast of characters kind of like, you know, have basically kind of a high noon type shootout. They do it at noon quite a lot, so it's not just me using one of the most famous westerns of all time, and have a shootout. And you obviously know various of these characters are going to die, unfortunately. They knew how to really make this kind of movie. Now, I don't think this movie's like perfect, but it is actually fairly good, and I think it understands what this movie is. Now, it isn't in a lot of ways. So Simon Moore wrote this film, and it's kind of like his baby. He thought of making it sort of an indie film, and he doesn't really get as much credit. I've noticed in reviews now people focus on the Sam Raimi-ness, and there's a lot of people and things to focus on, so it's no one's actual real fault. There's just like too many things to talk about with this movie almost. But Simon Moore, it was his idea. He was pushing it. He wrote it as a kind of Sergio Leone tribute. I don't know if it really plays that way for most of it, but that's what he wanted. They took it away from him at one point, had John Sayles come in and write a bunch of stuff, which they then completely took out. So it's almost like, why even bring that up? But that happened. And apparently Joss Whedon did something or whatever. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't actually figure out what Joss Whedon did, but he was there. So which is interesting to think of, you know, a ensemble cast kind of movie with Joss Whedon and Sam Raimi pre any MCU stuff, but you know, whatever. Maybe that's also why people liked it. But it was his kind of baby, and he wrote it as a Sergio Leone thing. But then Sam Raimi likes 50s movies. He likes classic Hollywood films. He likes cheesiness, but he understands the importance of it and why you're doing it and why you need it for your certain story. This to me plays like a really well cast B Western. a B Western that is like, I'm going to shoot the hell out of this because, you know, you're a B director and you love making these kind of Westerns. And that's what I really like about that. If you were to show me this film and not tell me who the cinematographer was, I would say it's Bill Pope, 100%. It's not Bill Pope, by the way, but it shows you how certain directors, if they know how to use a cinematographer, you can almost like see how they're almost kind of their auteur cinematographer eye is within that film. I think there's certain directors who, you know, every director is different with cinematographers, but this to me feels so Sam Raimi, and he's really good at moving the camera, moving it around, making it look gorgeous. Even people who don't love this movie love the cinematography. It's done by Dante Spinotti, I think, who also shot Last of the Mohicans, and he did a great job. He definitely gives this sort of like an interesting kind of 50s B approach to it, kind of a good cinematographer who shot the hell out of like a cheap movie. This wasn't a cheap movie, but he shot it in that way, and it makes it feel like that much larger and more alive to it. And I think that's one of the reasons this movie like plays so well, because when you think of a Western from the 90s, I think a lot of 90s Westerns, and I'm not an expert on them, I have a lot of glaring omissions like Tombstone and things like that, but I think with those, they're more in the action, post-action movie vein. This is not that. Sam Raimi made a Western. He straight up made a Western, but he directed it like a 50s B-movie Western director. He directed it almost like right before Sergio Leone, but he did not direct it other than a few scenes at the beginning, which I think there's shots in there, and if you're going to argue, hey, what about this scene, what about that scene, I would say it's in there. Sergio Leone is one of the most influential directors of all time on Western. It's like basically John Ford and Sergio Leone, and the eras when they come into the Western, it's like it becomes their era till the next one shows up, and I don't think anyone's really done it since Sergio Leone to the fact. Clint Eastwood's up there, you know, with Unforgiven, but if we're being real with it, Sergio Leone really influenced everything, so you can't really escape that. But I think Sam Raimi is clearly more influenced by the studio directors, and that's what I really like about it. But he also understands, like, having, you know, when you had an ensemble back in the day, you'd introduce everyone, you'd have a large ensemble, you'd focus on like 5 or 6 people, because you can't focus on like 30 people as a narrative. It just really doesn't work. There's always like 5 or so that are front and center, but he gives them all like very specific, unique traits in Simon Moore's screenplay. And I think because of that, everything pops out, but it almost makes you want to see, like, you'll forget about Keith David. You could never forget about Keith David, but you forget about Keith David when he shows up. It's like, it's so cool, because you're like, oh, now I get to see him. Now I get to see the kid who Leonardo DiCaprio plays. Now you get to see Russell Crowe. You get to see, you know, is he going to be able to do it? Because he has a gun, a really shitty gun with like 1 bullet. Like, what's he going to be able to do? Oh, well, how good of a shot is Gene Hackman? Is Sharon Stone as good as she says she is? All these things. You never really can ever get bored with it, I will say. I think this movie is always exciting in terms of how it, because it's not someone, when I say 50s Western, I think that turns a lot of people off, because Western, not a lot of people like Westerns, but when they think of Westerns, they like the newer kind of cooler Westerns, and this is not directed in a cooler way, but it's directed by someone who thinks this is the cooler way, and he shows it off in that way. So I think it's very alive in that tradition. DiCaprio is interesting because I think a few people asked me, would I talk about how DiCaprio was up for playing Spider-Man, or like how he was up for playing Spider-Man with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. And I was like, I don't think, I want to see the movie and think of his performance in the movie. But seeing Leonardo DiCaprio in The Quick and the Dead, I instantly went, I totally get why he thought he should be Spider-Man from this performance. Like, I totally get it. Like, he's funny, he's youthful, he's quippy. It's like, if it was 96, I could see it. I don't think... Also, he was in Titanic. If that guy was in it, it would have been... I understand financially why they at least spoke to him, but I get it after this performance. He's very good. Like, almost everyone gets to be a character actor in this, except for like Sharon Stone, and Gene Hackman, who are sort of doing their own thing. All the supporting actors get to have so much fun, chew scenery. It's amazing. I love it. I love it. And Sam Raimi's having fun with it. Lance Hendrickson is very rarely this over the top, and I think that is amazing. He's basically playing a Buffalo Bill type character. He's great. Keith David is wonderful. And the Russell Crowe and Leonardo DiCaprio, what is interesting is, Sharon Stone paid for, the studio didn't believe in either of those guys, and she fought for Russell Crowe in that role. They wanted like a bigger star. And then after that, she actually paid Leonardo DiCaprio's salary because the studio didn't believe in him. What's funny about that is I've heard about this movie, which did not do well, brought up more times because of the two of them. And even when DiCaprio went through that period when he was, I mean, he's never not been huge, but when Blockbuster made a shelf for like DiCaprio movies, I read at the time, and I've heard from other people, this did very well post-release because of its association. So it's like, it's funny because Sharon Stone probably made this film a lot more profitable years later than it probably ever would have been because of the association of those two. But she really fought for them. And I think her contribution to this film is interesting because I like when she is silent in the Man with Clint Eastwood, Man with No Name type. I think she's actually great at that. But as they explore the character, and I will say when they show you the real punch of why she hates Gene Hackman, that's unforgettable. However, leading up to that, when this film gets a little more melodramatic, I feel like it loses its sort of thesis of being very influenced by these classic westerns and kind of gets into 90s kind of drama, and I didn't think that was a great fit. I also feel like there's certain parts where like her and Gene Hackman are going toe to toe, and I'm not sure if Gene Hackman's confidence makes me think that she's never killed anyone, or but then, oh man, no, she definitely has, but he convinces you. Oh man, Gene Hackman's a motherfucker, I'll tell you that, because Gene Hackman convinced me she had never killed anyone, but that's not true. Man, this film actually deserves a rewatch because I experienced that scene and now in context. Anyway, that scene is crazy because Gene Hackman's just doing a great Gene Hackman villain performance. Basically, he's great in this. I think Sharon Stone she's not as much of a confident lead, and I think those melodrama things and stuff don't play as well, but maybe seeing it the second time, knowing what I know after seeing the whole film, might change that for me. There is one part towards the end where she kind of comes out and her hair's like crazy and like permed, and I'm like, what the fuck happened? Like, could they explain that? I don't really understand what happened there. That was weird. Was it just like she was like, I don't care, I want my hair this way, and they did it? I know they always write things about her being difficult. I don't really believe that's true, and regardless if it is or isn't, she made this movie what it is with casting, with Sam Raimi, with, you know, making it happen the way it was. So, you know, as difficult as she was, you can't argue with the movie that she helped produce. She was a producer as well. I like her, and I wish she had gotten to kind of play it more silently because I think she has a real talent at that, to be honest with you. This is also the last film of two different actors, Woody Strode and Robert Blossom, who was, of course, the old guy from the original Home Alone. And an interesting little side note, apparently the love scene in this, which I saw, because I saw a cut of it, depends on how you feel about this cut, is there's a love scene between her and Russell Crowe, which again changes the tense of a later scene, but that was cut out when you saw it theatrically, at least in America. Now, there seems to be a debate on whether it was put back in, and Sam Raimi apparently backed up that love scene shouldn't be in there, but apparently it was put back in either, according to who you were trusting on this, it was put in either the international release or the home video release. I saw it in the film version I saw, which was on Crackle. So I don't know what's going on there, but I will say it does change the tense a bit, and it doesn't feel like necessarily like you need to have it, and it was after like scenes with her that I didn't necessarily like, so maybe it would be a stronger film. I'm curious why I guess why the studio wanted to put it in, because the film didn't do that well and they thought that would help it sell a few more copies. So, but it is interesting to think that I keep reading her and Sam Raimi felt it should be lifted. So if that's the case, then maybe it shouldn't be in there in distribution. I think this is a cool movie. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's an interesting place for Sam Raimi, because between the Evil Dead films, between Spider-Man, is kind of like an odd place, because you don't have like Darkman was during the Evil Dead movies, you know, you get things like For the Love of the Game and A Simple Plan, which it's in the movie review vote now, but as well as that one was actually fairly well regarded, but like The Gift, like these weirder kind of films that I don't think we talk about them enough. But this is an interesting Sam Raimi find. I've seen people put it high up on his list. I don't know if I'd agree with that, because the other films in the Evil Dead films and Spider-Man 2 are pretty incredible, amazingly made films, so I don't really want to do that. But I would say if someone's into Sam Raimi and they've never seen this, I would say check it out. Although all of Bruce Campbell apparently was cut out, even though his name is still in the credits I saw in there and is pretty high up there, I still think it is a pretty substantial Sam Raimi film, and it makes me question what he really could do with the Western. Well, it makes me think about what he can do with the Western, and shows me kind of his love of classic Hollywood in kind of that classic way, and also that it's just sort of an interesting film. You know, you get these two actors right before their prime, you get, you know, kind of like a really great ensemble cast all put together in this cool like kind of concept. You get a real western in this. There's just so many things going on in terms of the cast and these people's careers all meeting at a head. And I think that sort of makes it a real interesting mix of things. And I think that's one of the things I really like about The Quick and the Dead, because it's like the only way this could have happened is then. And I really like the result of it. It shows me also, I think, Sam Raimi's real love for classic Western and the Western genre in general, and how fun and cheesy that could be, and how really great that can absolutely be. There's really nothing like a real gunfight, quick draw showdown. And I think The Quick and the Dead is absolutely in love with that kind of a concept. And frankly, I absolutely love it for that. So if you've seen The Quick and the Dead and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. If you're wondering, I always have to move the plants, but I thought I'm just going to leave them this time. So this is the plant review. I don't know. So that was a winner of the Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. Thank you very much for watching.